Hello learners and viewers, welcome to this session. Today's topic is discipline specific approaches. Myself Dr. Uma, Associate Professor from the School of Gender and Development Studies. With us today we have Dr. Sunita Dhal. She has specialized in this topic as well as she has specialized on women, science and technology, gender, ecology and indigenous knowledge system. We have specifically chosen this topic, that is discipline specific approaches, because the gender, women studies and gender studies, it is part of the interdisciplinary programs. Thus, it is important for us to explain the discipline-specific approaches as well as how we can put these disciplines in an interdisciplinary realm. That is the thing. Yeah. Discipline, as we all know, that discipline is organization of knowledge related to specific field of study, which includes the facts, observations, experiences, and other specialized facts related to that particular discipline that contribute to the fundamental component of that particular discipline knowledge. So basic rules, definitions also are created to determine whether knowledge falls within a scope of a particular discipline or not. That is important. Thus, we have chosen this topic. If you go through this entire video, it could be very useful for you to study specifically research methodologies in gender and development studies as well as research methodologies in women's and gender studies. That is, this topic specifically come under the course MWG-005 as well as MGS-005. With this introduction, I would like to ask, what is the origin of discipline from Dr. Sunita Dhal, since she is specialized in this topic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uma. And as you given a background of the importance of discipline and what constitutes discipline. So the moment we talk about origin of discipline, so largely it is very much rooted in the modern university system, when the new knowledge creation has started with the university. Because before that, in the post-enlightenment period, it has started. Otherwise, there was in the pre-enlightenment period, there was a distinction. The whole question of common sense knowledge was part, where science was part of the common sense knowledge. So the origin of discipline and its importance evolved in the university system, and primarily it has its root in the American universities, because the whole constitution of pure science, what constitutes pure science, has become a defining feature of the modern university systems, because there is more and more institutionalization of scientific knowledge, and for which the emphasis was placed on the aspect of rigorous research, publications, and how to in terms of coming up with credible journals, so that through rigorous research, publication in credible journals could be possible. So if we really look at origin of the discipline, we can, the literature could reflect upon the university systems and its and there had been an institutionalization of disciplines within those universities. And the new university system also began to be divided into specialized domains of knowledge, as you said, and each domain with its own learned societies and journals, right? So the disciplines in that sense could be referred as domains of specialized knowledge. We all come from, in our School of Gender and Development Studies, we have faculty from political discipline or political science, public administration, sociology, literature, English literature. So we could see that how different the disciplines have been put together to create a multidisciplinary school. And therefore, every discipline comes up with specialized knowledge. Specialized domain of knowledge encourages writing within each discipline. So there is also a connection, strong interlinkages between how discipline gets expanded and also reinforced through disciplinary writing. And you could also see that how every discipline has its own ways of academic writing, like the way sociologists write, or in the study of, let's say, the study of society. Similarly, anthropologists looking at the study of physical world. Economist looks into the economic aspect of the society, or the economic reality, or growth versus development. Similarly, political science looking at the political scenario or system, understanding it. Public administration looks at the administrative governance, the question of governance and its understanding. So there is a specific area of study within the discipline. Also, there is a particular way of writing. Therefore, discipline and writing within a discipline, they reinforce each other. So writing in disciplines began as a movement which recognized that disciplines are characterized by distinctive ways of writing and knowing. So unless and until, I could say that the discipline grows with the kind of writing, academic writings that takes place within a discipline. So in a way, writing reinforces disciplinary inquiry in any subject.
Now we could able to know that how the discipline originate. Basically, we need to do research and write, disseminate the knowledge. With that, more and more writings, the specific discipline emerges.
Yes.
Now we want to know that how are science, knowledge and discipline related to each other. That is very important.
Yes. So this is as we in the beginning of our discussion, certainly that the whole question of pure science, which was instituted within the university system, so that is also a disciplinary origin, has relationship with the history of science. That is, so it has a deep engagement with disciplines and the how disciplines were formed. Like if you really look at the work of Brazil, who writes on T.S. Eliot in claim that poetry is a science. So here, how does it mean, can poetry be seen as a science? So here the author argues that, scholars argue that yes, it is science because poetry involves serious study and it's a lifetime work. And like scientists, the poet requires specific knowledge, the domain knowledge, training, equipment, instrument, language. Poetry, certain language is also required to create a body of knowledge within that discipline. So in that sense, poetry is also a science. So that this is a very old debate in the West, in the Western countries, that how do we define science? Because the whole definition of science is not in relation to natural science. So science is first and foremost the systematic pursuit of knowledge, and which consists of program of education and research. How do we do a systematic study of knowledge? The systematic study of knowledge is only possible within a disciplinary contour. And therefore, there is an interlinkage, the deep interlinkage between science, how knowledge gets constructed. Here you can say the construction of scientific knowledge, and then the discipline. So every scientific knowledge will have to be constructed, located within a particular discipline. Similarly, like, there are examples also. So the whole difference between common sense knowledge, then scientific knowledge also came into debate post-enlightenment period.
Okay, you have explained how the science, knowledge and disciplines are related. Next, we would like to know, what does science constitute when we are discussing about disciplines?
So when we are discussing about disciplines, what constitutes science? Science can can be in social organization. It's a practical way to constitute academic disciplines, because here it is science is the truth claim. So how do we constitute a particular knowledge? It is only constituted through academic disciplines, through rigorous research, publications in credible journals. Science can also be referred as a means to connect with the community who possessed a specialized knowledge. So every discipline has specialized knowledge. So here, through publication, through rigorous research, you communicate your research to the academic peer group within your own discipline. So the existing knowledge that is subjected to specialized inquiry, therefore research is possible, therefore there is a need of research to create knowledge. Here science is not referred, as I said, in relation to natural science. So natural science are also disciplines. There are disciplines of natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. But science is more close to what it means to be a discipline, which means how to create scientific knowledge. That creation of scientific knowledge, the process of knowledge construction itself is possible within a particular discipline, and you can connect to the community through writing, through publication of the research work.
Usually when we talk about science, what we understood is that it is only making experiments. Based on that experiment, we will get the results. Here, as Dr. Sunita Dhal pointed out, that here we need to understand that here science is that we have to do more and more research in a
it is the knowledge
creations. That knowledge needs to be published, and more, if we create a knowledge in a particular field, it became a discipline. Then it can be part of any university system.
So the scientific knowledge is only created within an institution, and therefore disciplines are very important.
Now we have clearly understood that. Here, we need to define what is discipline. So how do we define discipline?
So what constitutes define, or how do we define discipline? So discipline, as we know, it is about a specific domain of knowledge. So within because of the discipline, we classify the reality or the knowledge into different domains, right? The classification, as we give the example of different disciplines like sociology studying social fact, then economics, psychology studying human behavior. So it is about a kind of a classification, and it is central to the Western philosophy or the idea of new science that Brazil also referred to the work and I cite and quote. So disciplines are based on conceptual and theoretical knowledge. So every discipline has its own classical readings to read about conceptual and the theoretical knowledge, and it has a defining guiding principle which helps in terms of asking, engaging with different kinds of questions within the discipline. Because without question, how are we going to do a social inquiry? So questioning in a way is important. New questions can actually lead to new ways of doing research or studying the social reality. So disciplines help to pose new question, and disciplines can function without being classified into a hierarchy. So there is no hierarchization of disciplines, but rather Brazil argues that, and cites also, that there is a kind of they're horizontally related, interlinked with each other, discipline, and therefore the question of interdisciplinary also comes into existence or debate, because that the disciplines are not hierarchically arranged, however they are horizontally placed for a better for a meaningful creation of new knowledge.
Now we could understood that how to define discipline also. Before we discuss about further, the learners may need to understand what constitutes discipline. That is more important because here in the 21st century, along with like traditional disciplines,
we have the new disciplines.
New disciplines are emerging. Allied sciences and new disciplines are emerged, and it is part of the university system. Many of our learners, they are taking those disciplines and specializing it. Here they would like to know what constitutes a discipline.
So I quote Brazil. What now distinguishes a discipline is that communities organized around applying a shared set of approaches to a shared set of objects were institutionalized in the first half of the 19th century in a shared set of social practices based in the university. So when we say that, it is, discipline is like, communities, academic communities organized around a particular domain of knowledge. So the discipline can constitute your research degree programs within the university, a department and the faculty, then specialized journals which are attached with the discipline, then professional bodies like in sociology, Indian Sociological Society, World Sociological Society, we have Indian Economics Society. Similarly, so there are journals also attached with these professional bodies, and those professional bodies are also, it constitute one of the components of discipline, along with the programs which are there in the discipline, and therefore there is always a kind of a mapping of academic program along with discipline.
Yes. Now we got it. For example, both of us, we belong to School of Gender and Development Studies. Even though we come from a traditional discipline, but we have specialized on gender studies, women's studies and gender and development. As far as Dr. Sunita Dhal is concerned, she has specialized on science and technology from a gender perspective, as well as ecology and indigenous knowledge system. This became a part of the gender studies. So it, like in this gender studies, we have also journals, we have also national and international associations. And Indian universities as well as international universities, they have a separate department, separate schools for gender studies. Thus, our learners, I hope you could be able to understand what constitutes a discipline. Here, another significant question comes to our mind is that now most of us are, even though we join in a particular discipline, we tend to, as a learner, you tend to take some courses from other disciplines. Here, there is another question comes to your mind is that, is there a need for discipline? That is the important questions here we need to engage with our learners.
So it's important to have disciplines, because even if we are in the realm of interdisciplinarity, in the time of interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, but at the same time, discipline is seen as a repository of static knowledge, and also discipline as active ways of knowing. So, like given the example of School of Gender and Development Studies, which is a multidisciplinary school, at the same time, all have come from the disciplines, the existing disciplines like sociology, psychology, political science, economics, so on and so forth. So, it is like, it's an active, through discipline, students, researchers, faculty, scholars, there is an active way of knowing the new knowledge. Faculty students learn about conceptual knowledge within their own disciplines. And what is the conceptual knowledge? How do we define conceptual knowledge? It is the organizing principle of knowledge in a particular discipline. So, writing within discipline is also a way of knowing your own discipline. So, if we work in the area of women's and gender studies, so there are different areas within women's and gender studies.
Yes.
And at the same time, there are specific ways of writing and knowing the discipline also that is happening. Like given the example of the rising female-headed household.
Yes.
How do we study the institution of family?
Yes.
How do we locate or study the gender-based violence within family in terms of dowry? Then how do we look at even violence in public sphere, in organizational sphere, in relation to sexual harassment? So there is a specific ways of knowing, researching and writing within, about a particular issue within the discipline. And doing research or writing in discipline describes the procedure we have adopted to study a particular phenomena. Okay. So there is a set of procedures or methodological nuances or lens, perspective or approaches within which we are guided by the discipline. Therefore, discipline is important. So when we are talking about our two courses, MWG 005 and MGS 005, so here learners must be reading or might have read about feminist research methodology.
Yes.
So here, how do we look at, how do we define what is feminist epistemology? How do we understand what constitute feminist methodology? So it is a particular ways of providing a feminist consciousness or lens while undertaking the research or the entire research process. So you can give the example of how the respondents in the research process is treated as research participants. Because if I really look at the work of Anne Oakley and what she argues in feminist interviewing, her chapter on feminist interviewing. So she looks at interview is not a hierarchical method of data collection. Feminist interview is all about having a collaborative research where the respondents are not object of the research. They are active research participants in the research process. And therefore, the moment we say research participants in the research process, so the hierarchy in a way we are questioning in the interview method. So these are like, doing research, writing in a discipline, describes the procedure and also disciplines guides what are the set of rules and how with the help of guidelines or set of rules, new questions can be answered. And therefore, we need discipline.
That is, we could able to understand that the need for discipline, and specifically she has given an example of a feminist research methodology for the course MWG 005 and MGS 005. Here also, when even research scholars, when they join in the School of Gender and Development Studies, we specifically teach feminist research methodologies along with research also, but we may ensure them that they learn and they study about feminist research methodology, and thus they could able to bring the feminist knowledge or they could do the research,
situated knowledge, context specific knowledge. So where the location of the subject is very important, where there is reflexivity also in the research process, in which the researcher herself or himself interrogate and having a critical reflection of his or her position in the research process. So it's kind of a questioning. So reflexivity also allows the research participants to put questions, and which are part of the research process.
Yes, but we can discuss later on multi and interdisciplinary research. Before that, would you like to say a few words about advantages of disciplines? For example, we have discussed about the need for discipline. That we have got a clarity. Now we must know that whether there is any specific advantages of discipline.
So even when we talk about advantages, so one is that every discipline has revealed some thought-provoking questions. So, like, how do we study, like, let's say, gender-based violence? So, it has a kind of a creative way of, putting newer questions. So, what are the forms of gender-based violence? Earlier, we were not talking about gender-based violence. So, how these concepts came into existence. And now forms where it is mental, physical, emotional, then cyber violence. So, these different forms have also categorized also and conceptually explained. So therefore, it is how do concepts come from disciplines. So, and these questions suggest that the growth of various disciplines has also broadened the separate compartments of academia. It is written by Brazil in the paper in the year 2018. So has broadened the separate compartments of academia up to and beyond the point of confluence. And despite there is a kind of a sensitivity also, but there could be contradictions within the discipline, but it has somehow, disciplines have also expanded and also some, as you said, allied disciplines also came into existence. Allied sciences, allied subjects have also came into existence. So new branches of or the areas of knowledge have emerged in response to the pressure those who seek to broaden the subject matter and methodologies. Like in that sense, it is important that when we are talking about multi, inter and transdisciplinary, it is going to, the starting point is the discipline. And with this, I would say that, the discipline has an advantage because of knowledge creation.
Thank you so much for explaining very clearly on origin of the discipline and the relationship between science, knowledge and discipline, and what constitutes the discipline, as well as we could able to define the discipline. Here we can have a short break. When we come back, we will discuss about multi, inter and transdisciplinary disciplines, as well as researches related to that, how we can locate gender studies in this entire discussions. Thank you so much for listening this.
Thank you.
Are you interested in television journalism or radio journalism or online journalism? Or do you want to learn with the flexibility of open learning? Or if you are a working professional, wants to enhance your knowledge and skill with certification in the field of electronic media, then School of Journalism and New Media Study, IGNOU, offers PG Diploma in Electronic Media for you. This program includes audio and audio-visual program production for radio, television and online platforms. Here are some important details about the program. We have total 8 courses of 32 credits, 6 theory courses, 1 practical and 1 project. Eligibility: bachelor's degree in any subject. Minimum duration 1 year, maximum 3 years. Medium is English, but students can write their examinations, assignments, practical and project in Hindi also. So if you are interested in television, radio or online media, please come and join IGNOU's PG Diploma in Electronic Media.
Hello learners and viewers, welcome to this session. We were discussing about discipline specific approaches. Myself Dr. G. Uma, with us we have Dr. Sunita Dhal. She is also belonged to the School of Gender and Development Studies, and she has specialized on science and technology, gender and ecology and indigenous knowledge system. Before break, we were discussing about the origin of discipline as well as the relationship between science, knowledge and discipline, and what constitutes the discipline, as well as we could able to define discipline. Dear learners and viewers, I hope you got a clarity on those aspects. Now, we will discuss about multi-trans and interdisciplinary approaches. And when we talk about multi-trans and interdisciplinary terms, these terms, what do we mean these terms? That is very important. And why do we need to do research on multi-trans and interdisciplinary approaches? That is very important. In this 21st century, in a university, most of these disciplines belong to multi, inter or transdisciplinary, like what we call as departments or schools
of liberal studies.
That we have, like we are also belong to the School of Gender and Development Studies, as well as in many of the universities they have developed the School of Liberal Studies.
Yes.
In that liberal studies, they are like language, literature, culture, many of the existing disciplines. It was part of the School of Liberal Studies. As well as we have, even IGNOU also, we have a School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Research, as well as we have many interdisciplinary schools in IGNOU itself. In this scenario, we must study about the term. What do we mean multi-trans and interdisciplinary research? Let us ask Dr. Sunita Dhal to explain these terms. What does this term means?
So this term, thank you so much. So these terms, multi, inter and trans. Multi means many disciplines working on one phenomenon or social reality. Inter, all phenomena can be studied within an intersectional approach. So, which means that many disciplines can work to resolve or to research on one problem or phenomenon. And inter, all phenomenon can be studied within an intersectional approach. Then given this example of interdisciplinary. So we could see, we can here given an example of let's say agriculture, right? So in terms of agricultural participation, labor force participation in agriculture. Yes. So within the discipline of economics also it can be studied, agriculture, the rate of labor force participation in agriculture. Similarly, it can be studied from a gender perspective, right? From women's studies, looking at labor force participation on the basis of gender in agriculture or in informal work, and so that in which sector more and more women are represented as workers or agricultural wage laborers, so on and so forth. So this is an example of interdisciplinary, where one problem, one single phenomenon is studied from intersectional approach. And trans is blurring the boundaries of your own discipline. So when we blur the boundaries, when we work in a problem where disciplinary researchers from different disciplines are involved, as well as you have the involvement of policymakers, you have agencies who are partnering institutions as implementing the outcome of the research, and also the who is the target group. It could be community, it could be public. Other stakeholders. When public is involved, then it becomes transdisciplinary in nature. So these are the basic understanding of multi, inter and trans in terms of its terminologies.
Okay. With regard to interdisciplinary researchers, will you able to, the School of Gender and Development Studies, we have a very unique courses like certificate in gender and law, certificate in gender and science, certificate program in gender, agriculture and sustainable development. You have explained with the example of agriculture. Maybe you could able to explain with the gender and science.
Yes.
So then learners could able to relate that how this can be part of the interdisciplinary research.
So first is that why do we need the purpose of doing interdisciplinary research? Because of the human complexity, physical complexity, and the natural world complexity. So the complexities of the social reality in a way has increased. So also physical and environmental complexities. So research, therefore, shall relate to theory building, and also the aim should be how it can improve the human living conditions. Like now we are in a time of even climate emergency, climate change or climate crisis, whatever we can say. So when we are talking about here climate emergency, so we could also see that it can be studied, and there could also be an aspect of gender justice when we are talking about climate crisis, because the impact is felt differently by all the genders, right? And women being vulnerable gender, so the impact, they are placed in a socially disadvantaged position, women and children, and therefore the impact assessment, when we do an impact assessment of climate change or climate emergency in any situation, it is going to be differently experienced by women vis-a-vis other genders or men, right? So aims at even interdisciplinary research aims at developing a systematic and comprehensive conceptual framework for analyzing scientific, social, economic, gender, political, environmental, institutional factors, and how these factors are influencing the human nature condition. That could be an example. So what are the areas we can identify here? Gender also is an area of interdisciplinary research. So also like population, health, ecology, humanities, climate science, desertification, sustainability, sustainable agriculture, water resources, all of these, like even like health now, some of the international agencies are working on One Health, the concept of One Health. Even in India also, the government is also working on One Health, right? The concept of One Health. So here these are all interdisciplinary. So it's not about health in relation to human health. Health is also in relation to the animal health and environmental, so on and so forth, right? So in like 1960s and 70s onwards, research started to focus on interdisciplinarity. So therefore, whole question of even sustainability came into debate. What is sustainable living? What is sustainable development? Do we really need to rethink about growth versus development? Or does development lead to social growth? So these questions were also debated. So even in the example of like disease control, dominated initially by medical and biological science. So that is multidisciplinary. It can be studied from multiple disciplinary perspective. Later economics, gender studies also began to look at women's health question. Right? Alma-Ata conference in the year 1978, where World Bank and UNICEF focused on disease control through community-based healthcare management. So community participation is also important, and also how intersectoral action, like intervention-based action, can possible in the research, so that the transformation can actually reach to the unreached. And Community Health Movement of South Africa talks about innovative practice, research and teaching. So this could be an example of transdisciplinary. So here not only the practitioners are involved or the researchers from multiple disciplines are involved, but it is how a practice can actually link to the research and also teaching. So it is kind of an extension. So teaching also has a component of implementing through extension, and also that will help in terms of expanding the research outcome or undertaking newer question which are more important in the contemporary context.
So you have explained with an examples of this. Now, what is the difference between inter and transdisciplinary research?
Yes,
that is more
important. So here, what constitutes transdisciplinary research? So we have a fair idea about interdisciplinary research. So transdisciplinary research is more collaborative. It is a creative collaboration. And why it is creative collaboration? Because there is multiple stakeholders here are involved, not only researchers from with specific domain knowledge, however multiple stakeholders. Disciplinary background is the starting point of transdisciplinary research, because you go beyond the boundaries of the discipline. But everybody, like the way we develop the program of women's and gender studies, the program of women and MA in gender and development studies, this could be these are all interdisciplinary areas have been incorporated. But if you could say that the nature of integration which has happened while developing the program, it is transdisciplinary in nature, where you have areas from different disciplines have been incorporated in creation of the entire academic program. Right. So disciplinary background is the starting point of transdisciplinary research. Each team member needs to be familiar with the concept and approaches of other team members. Combination of researchers, policymakers, implementation or monitoring partners and public are also involved. And for example, Consultative International Agricultural Center, Peru, where agricultural anthropologists are working, engineers are working, farmers are working on a project storing the potato seeds, right? So here you create a system knowledge. And how do we create system knowledge? It can be created through a disciplinary knowledge. So therefore, discipline is the beginning of transdisciplinary research. And from system knowledge, why we are creating this kind of system knowledge? It is because it is the knowledge is, what is the target group and how do we move from system knowledge like disciplinary knowledge to target knowledge? Means how knowledge can be applied, right? And then with the application of this knowledge, the transformation can be seen. That is transformational knowledge. So the purpose of transdisciplinary research is to move from systemic knowledge or system knowledge to target knowledge, and then the outcome is transformational knowledge. To create knowledge by involving multiple stakeholders, so that in a way that knowledge would bring about social transformation, economic transformation, environmental transformation for the entire society or the different communities. So this is one. So we could actually pick up examples.
More examples you could able to give. Then the viewers and our learners, they could able to relate the difference between inter and transdisciplinary. They have, I think they have a more clarity about the interdisciplinary research. Then giving more examples, then they get more clarity on this aspect.
So with this, we can look at that, the label of integration. The label of integration makes any research multi, inter and transdisciplinary in nature. So multidisciplinary research is also called a coordinated research, because you are coordinating, that is, to study a particular subject, particular research from multiple positions. Then like assessment based research, like impact of climate variability or vulnerability on women is an example of your multidisciplinary, because one single discipline cannot do an assessment. Multiple disciplines can do an assessment. Then interdisciplinary brings an integration between natural and social scientists. There is exchange of tools, instruments and knowledge, like women in science. You get the example.
Gender and agriculture.
So these are where you could see that interdisciplinary brings. There is an exchange of knowledge, exchange of tools, instruments, even methodological nuances. So learning from each other to study a particular
even scientists
problem.
They could be able to learn from a gender
Social
studies,
scientists.
social scientist or gender science scholars of gender studies. They can learn from how to bring a feminist perspective in their own research.
Into the research process. So even Department of Science and Technology also promotes research in societal science. So that could be in India. That could be an example of interdisciplinary research, societal science, where there is an interface between science and society, and the outcome is transformational in nature.
Yes. Even Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, they have established a science park in many of the places.
Many of the states.
They could able to integrate gender into existing scientific researches. The component, specifically the gender component, will be part of their research.
So here, this is an example we have taken, that MIT example. Irwin, it is a study in the year 2011, like increasing sound pollution and decreasing urban green space. So this is two indicators are there. So increasing pollution and with decreasing green space. So in a way it is it is talking about that how different kind of researchers are involved in terms of taking this particular issue. So there are several examples here, we can look into it. There are several examples, and in this way we could see that we can always look at environmental psychologists, discipline of environmental psychology, ecology, acoustical analysis to measure the sound pollution and how it has a relationship with decreasing green space. So the only difference between inter and transdisciplinary discipline is transdisciplinary involves the community, where community, so it is more intervention based research. So we could say that action research could be an example of your transdisciplinary research, where intervention is important. So intervention of the community is important, because unless and until the community is one of the stakeholders, then the knowledge could not be transformational for the target group.
Yes. Like I could able to give you more example. Even research scholars who have joined in a traditional disciplines like sociology, economics, psychology, political science and public administrations, they have also chosen the research topics related to inter and transdisciplinary researches. For example, if a research scholar may be specialized on, instead of for example in a public administration or political science, earlier they may do the research on voting pattern. Now they specifically they look into how the women are voting. What is the impact of if we increase the women's percentage in political space or as in administrative space, what kind of impacts it creates on political space and administrative space. Even in, for example, psychology also, they can specifically they include the gender component. all those, like more and more researchers these days, even researchers who are part of the natural sciences also, they may include specifically on gender components in their research. So here we have to give more example, or we have to explain little more about how can we look at gender studies in interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. That is more important. So, since we are from School of Gender and Development Studies, and we have specialized on more on women's studies, gender studies and gender and development studies, it is very important to make our viewers to understand that how can we look at gender studies from an inter and transdisciplinary perspective.
So here, like, as we know, like, even like in interdisciplinary, as I said, like with the Rio Conference on Sustainable Development, so focus came into interdisciplinary research, so that in interdisciplinary research, identification of barriers, like as you gave the example of voting pattern, right? In terms of increasing, women's representation in the political space. It's a good example of interdisciplinary research. So whether there is a disciplinary barrier to understand the voting pattern earlier, and how it has been expanded. Similarly, organizational, resource bound, and then evaluation. So how do we do, and even impact assessment study. When we come to transdisciplinary, it is researching beyond boundaries, like reaching out to other stakeholders, action-oriented research where both academic and non-academic community looking for a transformative knowledge. Then research design is more dynamic and flexible in nature. And let's come to like gender studies. That is, we have differentiated between interdisciplinary, the salient features of interdisciplinary research and transdisciplinary research. So in gender studies, if you really would like to look at, like I would like to look at in the context of climate change, so gender in international climate policies. So we were talking about climate justice. So now we are talking about gender justice in climate change, right? So into like how integrating gender into climate change initiatives, negotiations, to recognize women as agents in coping and survival strategies, because they would have different survival strategies. So, and even gender analysis of carbon emission in terms of both the genders, right? Innovating gendered solutions to technology, innovating gendered solution technologies as a kind of a mitigation to climate change. Then gender responsive technologies also we need to develop and transfer and adapt as per women's needs. So clean cook stove would be a good example in terms of women's accessing clean fuel. And gendered solution to mitigation is like gender and forest, gender and biodiversity, how like women's knowledge on biodiversity. So these are some of the example I can give.
Related to climate change, I would like to bring a small example along with whatever example you have given. Now we all of us, we know that there is more and more migration, and there is a male migration from rural to urban areas. So most of the agricultural activities, more and more agricultural activities are feminized. So when we talk about the climate change and its impact, specifically in the field of agriculture, it's very important to apply a feminist knowledge on how that climate change impact women farmers. That is more important. See, farming is, if we don't have a gender knowledge on then we realize that farmers means immediately what comes to our mind is that male members. It is not true that due to various factors, farming activities itself, it became more and more feminized. So here when we talk about the climate change, it's very important to apply a feminist knowledge on studying the climate change and its impact.
Impact also, and also mitigation coping strategies of women farmers. So even millet farming also we can give the example. In terms of how women are involved in millet farming.
Yes.
So another example we can give in terms of disaster also. So like World Bank report in the year 2021 provide a conceptual framework which include indicators like disaster impact, gender inequality, gender differentiated impact of disaster, and disaster risk management intervention. So I think these are areas where it is more interdisciplinary. These are interdisciplinary areas where this World Bank report focuses gender roles and disaster impact in a comprehensive manner. It addresses communities' access to education, health and employment, women's access to financial resources, addressing issues of child marriage and violence, including gender roles in disaster preparedness also is very important, and coping capacity. So like for instance, women and girls, access to early information, safe shelter, bank accounts, these are very important gender dimensions which need to be carried out when we are mapping disaster and its impact on gender. So these are some of the examples that we can give in our area.
We must thank Dr. Sunita Dhal for explaining the origin of discipline and how do we define discipline, as well as she has explained about the science, knowledge and discipline related, how these things are related to each other, as well as what constitute disciplines. After explaining the disciplines, the second part we learnt about inter, trans and multidisciplines, as well as how do we define these terms, and which are the aspects comes to inter, trans and multidisciplinary researches. All those things she has explained very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunita Dhal. Hope our learners as well as viewers, you could able to get a knowledge on these aspects. Once again, we thank you from the School of Gender and Development Studies, and happy learning.
Thank you so much.